Princess Joey.
Snowing in England. No, it's night Joey. Sir Joey. Sir Joey Lots. It's been snowing in England.
That's fine, Chris. Fine. Right. Okay then, everybody. Now, this, as I said, King's losing his crown. Now, this, as I said, this story happened quite a long time ago, and it happened in the oldest part of the castle, where we are at the moment. If you just look at the wall over there, you can see that the bricks are in kind of a zigzag, which is actually called a herringbone pattern, and that was the style of the building that they had in this time. And when I say a long time ago, we are starting this story in 972. So, a fair time ago. Now, just to confuse us all, everybody's name in this story begins with the letter E. So, living in the castle, we had King Edgar here.
Edward.
Now, Edgar was married to Edwina. Now, she's not in our story because she's only got a small part. Edgar and Edwina had a son here called Edward. Unfortunately, soon after Edward was born, Edwina died. Edgar was alone for a little while, and then luckily he met his new wife, Elfrida. Hello. And Edgar and Elfrida got together, and they had a son over here, Ethelred.
Oh, yeah.
So the four of them all lived in the castle together. Okay. Now, Elfrida was very bossy. Okay. She always liked to get her own way. And she was very lucky as a queen because the king would actually always listen to her. She might get up in the morning and say, "Oh, shall we have a battle with the people over in Swanage?" And the king would say, "OK, dear, yes, whatever you want." Okay, so she'd always get her own way. Our two brothers here, they were really good mates. Hey? They'd go out hunting together, they'd practice their fighting together, got on really well. Edward got on fine with his dad, but he didn't really like his stepmom. Okay? He wouldn't do what she asked. Remember, I said she was very bossy, so she'd tell him to do something and he would ignore her. So, yeah, they didn't get on very well. Whereas Ethelred here got on fine with his mum and his dad, the king and queen. Okay, they had a great relationship. Okay, so the four of them were all happy in the castle. Now, King Edgar was a strong believer in his country. There were some kings who just sat around giving out orders and didn't fight. But, in this relationship, it was the queen who gave out the orders, and he would actually go off and do the fighting. Now, one day, he got on his horse and he rode off over that way into battle, where he drew his sword and his bow and his arrow. And he was fighting, and unfortunately, a huge arrow came flying at his chest. And that was the end of the king.
I should take your crown.
Brilliant. Right, you can rejoin the audience, King. This left Elfrida alone as queen.
Loner.
With the king as dead, we need a new king. Who is going to become the new king?
Him.
Rather than someone who do you think is going to become the new king? Rather than people in the audience.
Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown.
Edward, the oldest son. Okay. So Edward got the crown. Okay. Now, don't worry about the outfit, just have the crown. So Edward's got his crown. Now, of course, you've just seen that reaction on his face. He doesn't get on very well with Elfrida. Okay. She wasn't happy at all. She couldn't give out her orders. She would have much preferred it if Ethelred had become the king. Any ideas how she's going to get Ethelred to become the king? She's going to murder Edward. That was the plan. Okay. So the day came when she was going to carry out this evil plan. Okay. And Edward and Ethelred, they'd got on their horses and they'd ridden out to Wareham Forest over there. Just hold it, that would be brilliant. Rode out that way to the forest to do some hunting. So this left our queen in the castle to come up with a plan. So she went to talk to her two evil servants over here. And they worked out exactly what was going to happen on the return of the brothers. Right. Then, of course, Queen Elfrida had to go and hide. She couldn't be seen caught us in this. She nipped off to her room over there, out of the way. And our servants got themselves ready. They were waiting in the courtyard for the castle for for the return of our two brothers. The end of the day came, they came riding back from Wareham Forest. And they got to the castle. Now Ethelred, who'd made it here first, brilliant, was quite tired. He got straight off his horse and he just went up to his room. The king was also quite tired. It's been a long day. He was hungry and he's thirsty. Luckily, the first servant here came up to him. She was carrying a big goblet of wine. She handed it over to the king. He was really thirsty. He gulped it all down. And then, it didn't taste quite right. He bent forward as if he was going to throw up. And our servant number 2 ran round behind him. She drew her dagger and stabbed him in the back. Right, then the servants ran and hid out of the way. As he fell off his horse, his foot got caught in the stirrup of the horse. And the horse panicked, and the horse then dragged him. I won't drag you across the road. But it dragged him for 2 miles down the road. And then left him in the middle of a forest. Living in the forest was a little blind lady. Now, she knew her way around the forest quite well, but one day she was wandering along, and, well, she just tripped over this big block that was in the middle of our forest. Now, of course, she didn't know who it was. He'd lost his crown along the way, but she could tell that, unfortunately, this was a body, but he was covered in mud and twigs and things, and she was a colonist, so she thought, well, I'll clear the body up before we perhaps bury him. So she picked all the twigs and bits of the thing. And after she did this, she was feeling quite tired, so she settled down for a little nap. And this is where the first of our miracles or mysteries happen. Remember, I said this was a story of a murder and 3 miracles. When she woke up, she sat up, she stretched, and opened her eyes, and she could see. It was a miracle. She looked at the body. She thought, this has got to have magical powers. Of course, she still didn't know whose body it was because she'd never seen the king before. But she thought, we need to put this body somewhere where everybody in the village can benefit from its magical powers, because they certainly believed in magical mysteries in these times. So they needed to put his body somewhere where everyone in the village goes every single day. Can anyone think of somewhere where you'd need to go every day?
The toilet.
Okay. Or it's kind of associated with the market. You go to the market for food, but we'd go to this place for something else. Yes, Body?
The toilet?
You definitely need to go to the toilet after you'd been to the place I'm thinking of. Yep.
A well?
A well, brilliant. The well to collect water, because of course they wouldn't have taps. So our poor King Edward here, he has been poisoned, he has been stabbed, he's been dragged through a forest, dumped after 2 miles in a wood. Then he was picked up and thrown down a well. Right, so he is well and truly dead. The villagers came to this well and they started making wishes. And supposedly some of these wishes came true. Some people even claimed they saw lights coming out of the well. Back in the castle, Elfrida was getting worried. Right? She had given her servants a job to do. They'd had to kill the king, get rid of the body, and now she'd heard these stories of this body and she thought she might get found out. Right? She wasn't very happy with her servants at all. So she ordered them to go and get the body from the well. Go and do some ordering. Hey, so her servants came to the well and they made one of you on his arms, one of you on his legs. That's it. Grabbed him, lifted him out of the well and just carried him a little bit. Brilliant. Hey, and then Queen Elfrida came over here and she pretended she was really shocked, really horrified that she'd seen the king. Of course, Ethelred here, his brother, he was really shocked and really horrified. He didn't know what had happened. He'd lost his brother, his best mate. They decided they needed to have a big ceremony in honour of the king. So Elfrida and Ethelred both got onto their horses and they were going to parade around the town. And this is where the third miracle or mystery happened. So we had the blind woman getting her sight back, we had the magic lights and wishes coming true, and now they got on their horses and said, well, like a normal horse would do, Ethelred's horse went forwards. But Elfrida's horse went backwards. Now, they thought maybe it's something wrong with the horse, and being the kind son he was, he said, well, we'll swap horses. So they got off their horses, walked and swapped places, and got on again. And again, Ethelred's horse went forward, and Elfrida's horse went backwards. Now, Nearly tripped over by the dead body. She was really terrified by this. She believed she was being punished, that evil was at work, because they certainly believed in evil and mysteries at those times. So she left the castle backwards and never came back again. So this just left Ethelred here at the castle. Okay? With Edward dead, Ethelred now gets to become the king. Okay? And he was very pleased with this. Okay? Unfortunately for Ethelred, his role as the king didn't last very long. Okay? He was actually given a nickname. And I don't know whether I've picked the right person for this job, but he was nicknamed Ethelred the Unready, because he was never ready for anything. And the reason he wasn't ready is because he was just 10 years old. And some of you are probably thinking, oh, actually, it would be quite cool to be the king or the queen at 10. Okay? But he much preferred to be out hunting and fighting, learning all his skills, rather than having to rule the country, give out orders and work out what was happening. So after a while, they got rid of him, kicked him off the throne, and they replaced him with a man called Sven, who was an adult and was even worse than our 10-year-old king. So they brought you back for a bit. Now, so that is the story of Ethelred the Unready. Edward here, who was renamed Edward the Martyr for all the suffering he had been through. Our murder and our 3 miracles or mysteries. Round of applause for actors and actresses. You've done a great job. Well done.
And me. I need to take a bow.
Excellent.
Okay, you don't